normally you are going to have either a froth over, or you could end up with a boil over where your product is going to expel from that tank. It's going to get into your bunding area. It could also go into adjacent areas. We could have a significant increase, escalation with these fires. So we need to understand how this is working, this kind of fuel. So the main risk we got with these, with a crude oil fire, we got a boil over. A boil over is going to be a thermal layer within that crude, makes contact with water content, the water cut of the tank, and we're going to have an expel of the product from the tank. We can have a froth over. What that can be is when the thermal layer is going down in the tank, you're going to have water droplets suspended in the oil, and that can create mini expellation of the product from the tank. Or we can have a slop over, and a slop over is a result of what we do. We can create a slop over. So we're looking at these three different scenarios here. So that would be this one here. That could be either a froth over or a slop over. I can't see what they're doing there. I don't think they're actually putting anything in the tank. So that's most likely a froth over that's happening. So a boil over. What we're talking about is the heat wave, and we'll discuss how a heat wave generates later. A heat wave has reached the water cut in a tank, and what's happening is when it reaches the water cut, what's going to happen is the water, you've got temperature, the hot temperatures hitting the water, you've got the pressure of that as well. Now at atmospheric pressure, kalau I am in Didi, what's the expansion ratio from liquid to gas? What's your expansion? 1,742 kali. Does that sound familiar? That's at atmospheric pressure. So you boil water, water converts to steam, your expansion ratio is 1,742 times. Under pressure, that's going to be a lot higher. So if you imagine that now happening, where's my demonstration tank that I prepared today? In my demonstration tank, if I've got water in there, I've got a water cut on the bottom, that water expands 1,742 plus times. It can't expand out because the tank is a structure. Where's it going to go? Up. It's going to go up. And when it expands up, what's it going to push out of the tank? What's coming out? Crude. Yes, your crude is coming out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
take a drink.
Another thing that's going to happen.
We'll get
some slides and show you here in a minute. But something else to consider. Here's the tank. Here's 6 o'clock. Here's 12 o'clock. So we're going to be, ideally, we're going to be down on the 6 o'clock position. There's my wonderful monitor drawing. Here's the team with our monitors. Your thermal layer, as it goes down, we'll show you this later, it doesn't go down direct, it actually will go down at a slight angle. That's how your thermal layer is going to go down. Why? Here, angin masuk, 6 o'clock position. Here, that's where the flame layover is. It's a bit like a combustion engine, yeah? It comes in here and it exhausts this side. So as it gets hotter on this side, you're going to be hotter on this side here. It is sangat panas di sini. So your thermal layer is going to be a bit warmer on this side. And it's going to come down in this direction. As your thermal layer gets down to here, all the water cut on the bottom, where it's hot, if you think of this, if you've got a bit sedikit air di panci, kasih panci di atas your copper, your flame, you see all the water bubbles and runs. Itu lari ya, itu air lari. So, and this will be the same. The water is going to start bubbling here, and it's all going to run to this side. This is where your water's going to be. So as that gets hot, the water runs to here. So eventually, when that thermal layer hits the water here, now you're going to have your expansion. This is where your crude is going to be coming out, where you are at the 6 o'clock position. So the thermal layer, although we're going to show it coming down straight there, in reality it does come down at an angle. Water runs to this end. Most of your expelled fuel is going to come with your side. So, violent, sudden disgorging of a tank in the case of a crude oil tank fire. I'll show you some video of this a bit later before we finish. But the thing is with the crude, although it says it's sudden, there is signs. We do have signs. And what you're going to see, you're going to hear it. Again, if you let's say you want to gore in some ayam, yeah, and you kick it off and you start to gore in some ayam, and normally as it heats up, you'll hear. Yeah, that's the same sort of sound you're going to get when the thermal layer is starting to hit this water. You'll start hearing that. You'll hear crack, 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 crack. It'll be just like you get your ayam. Let's say you had the ayam in
Pen?
Let's say you take the ayam from the kulkas. Do you call it kulkas here? I don't know. The Indonesians call it kulkas.
Kulkas.
Dutch. Refrigerator.
Oh.
Yeah. So you take it from the refrigerator. You put your ayam in the hot oil. You'll get a crack, 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 crack sound because you got the water content burning off, popping off, pop, 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 pop. You'll get that sound. Yeah, so that's normally one of the first sounds. You'll hear crack, 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 crack. Another sign you're going to get is your smoke. The smoke on here on your crude burning is nice and black, but also you'll see the smoke will start to change colour. It will start to go grey. Yes, do you call it grey? Abu, do you call that here?
Kelabu.
Okay. Yeah, so it changes colour a bit. You'll see the smoke starts to change, and the smoke will start to roll a bit more. You call it guling? Yeah. So it starts to do that, it get grey, it starts to roll, and you'll hear crack, 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 crack. And these are signs that the water is starting to get hot. And that's normally the time when we see that start to increase, that's time for us to leave. Keep the monitors, leave them there, keep them running, we move away. So although it says there, sudden disgorging, yes, when it does go, it's sudden, but there is warning signs for us. That's the key thing. There is warning signs. Yeah. So, is there anyone here who went to the extreme school in Thailand? Extreme school in Thailand? Normally, when Williams do their extreme school, so at the moment we're just doing it annual in the US, we always do a boil over. We set up we've got a tank and we use crude, and we do a mini boil over for everyone to witness. And it's very good because you'll get to see the signs, you'll get to hear the signs. So, yeah. So I'll put some video on there later. You'll be able to see the smoke, but it's just like you're goreng ayam, or you're doing some goreng kentang goreng, because I'm orang Inggris. Yeah, we like to do our kentang goreng. You put your chips, you put your kentang in the hot oil. Initially it goes quack, 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 quack. It's all the water boiling off. You can hear it. Here you're going to hear it. You're going to feel it. You'll see the smoke. Yeah. Smoke change, the smoke start to roll. Time to leave. So This one, the froth over. Let's get back to my wonderful drawing. With a froth over.
Over.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum everybody.
Do you have a mixer in there? Do you agitate the crude?
Yeah.
You've got that on there.
Makes sense.
One of the things is when your crude tank gets involved in a fire, that's gone to fire now, turn off the mixer. Because what the mixer's doing, any water cut, and all crudes are going to have a water cut. Yeah, and even the tank itself, because your tank is never going to be level at the bottom, it's not rata, you're always going to have little dips there. So you're going to, even in the bottom here, you're going to have little pools of water as well. But when you're mixing, the water is becoming suspended in the crude. So that's why if that goes to fire, turn off the mixer, because we want that water to migrate to the bottom to give us more time. But the thing is, if your heat wave, which we'll show you later, comes down and it starts to contact with some of these little pockets of water, you've got your little canton, or I don't know what you call it, your pocket of water. As that goes there, it hits these water pockets, that water expands. Again, it's doing that expansion, and that can result in some of your crude getting expelled here. As that expands, expansion pushes bits of crude out. So that's why. Is it because I said pop? It's done it again. The other day I said bang and that closed. It shut down. Today now I said pop. Yeah, that's very sensitive, yeah?
Slope over.
So that's what we're talking about. It's a froth over. You can get product coming to your bunded area, but it's normally created as that heat layer hits these small pockets. So you can end up with a product there. Actually, this raises a good question on tactics.
Kamu
I think it's
15 minutes to.
sleepy mode, yeah, that's what it is, isn't it? Here's a question for you, just while we're on this, just a question. Let's say you've got a tank on fire, but you've also had some product on fire in the berm area now. So you've got a spill fire in the berm area, you've got a tank fire. Yeah? So on this, which fire do you think you should extinguish first? Which one would you go for?
Outside.
Yeah.
The speed.
Yeah, deal with your spill fire first. Yeah. Then you can come on to that. So that's a good point while we're on here. Let's just raise that. Yeah. Any bun fires? Sometimes I see some facilities, they try to calculate that they want to get lots of monitors and they want to flow and put out everything at one time. No need to do that. Yeah, that's going to be very demanding. That's going to be demanding on manpower. It's going to be demanding on water. We do this step by step. Protect your exposure first. Once we know that's protected, deal with that spill fire. Once that's out, next step, deal with that. And if we always follow that term, life safety, exposure, then step by step deal with your fires. If I protected the exposure, I deal with this first, that's not going anywhere, that will stay there. But if you put this out first, you still have fire here, you still got vapor here, what's going to happen? Yeah, it's going to reignite again, yeah? So it's like you've got to think in three-dimensional fires. You start at the bottom, you work up, correct? And it's the same here. If you've got a fire in the bunded area, deal with that first, then deal with your tank. As long as you're protecting exposures, that's not going anywhere. In the water, expand, little bit of expellation. You're going to get it expelled. With this, if we put our stream in and we create that, and it's coming out, that's going to last as long as we keep putting that stream in. So this can be an extended froth over. Froth over 7 hour whereas the slop over, that's going to be as long as you'll put your stream in. This can be slightly extended. So again, I'll be able to show you some video examples of this in a moment. So, the crude oil. So what we're talking about crude, it depends on the type of crude you got on location as well. Some crudes are lighter than others. A crude oil is many elements to it. You've got heavy elements and you've got the light elements of the crude. So the light elements is the ones that are going to vaporize. To your vapors, the ones that are going to, they're going to, those have got the lower vapor point, boiling points on them. So starting to sink, and the colder oil is coming to the surface. So that's what's happening. It's a rolling dynamic situation there. So that again. And as the cold elements come to the surface, that gets heated up by the hot oil and the fire. Gas is off again. Light elements gas off, burn. The heavier elements get hot, and they start to sink as well. More cold oil comes to the top, and it's continuous. So it's a continuous process that's going on. Basically, it's pretty similar to what they're doing in the refinery. Yeah, when they're starting to separate the different elements from the crude, this is happening in the tank itself. You're gassing off the lighter elements, they're burning off, heavier elements starting to sink as they get hotter. So, how can this lead to our boil over situation? That's what we're going to look at here. So again, this is visually picturizing just what I said there. So again, your light elements are gassing off. That heavier elements that's getting hot. This is what generates your thermal layer. So it's the heavy elements of the crude getting hot. That generates that layer, and that's going to start to sink now. So it's on top of your cold. The cold comes to the top. So as it's coming down, it's heating up the cold. Cold's coming up, it's gassing off, you're coming up to the top there. Again, this is your rolling situation. So that's visually showing you what's happening there. Like I said though, the only difference is if you've got any strong wind coming in on one side and it's gassing and it's exhausting, the fire's exhausting the other side, that layer will be slightly angled. It's going to be angled to the exhaust side of the fire. So again, as this is carrying on, it's heating up, the gas is going off, they're burning off, the heavier elements are accumulating, so you're getting more and more thicker layer on this thermal layer here. That's creating your heat wave. So again, as it's going on, heating off, eventually it's going to work its way down. That's what it's just showing you there. They kind of simulated it there for you. See, they're showing that slightly angled down. Does that make sense? So, hot, light elements, gas burns, generates more heat. The thick elements get hot, increases more, sinks down, heats up the cold oil, more gas release, more heavy elements added to the thermal layer, and it works its way down. Now, how fast this happens, this is basically, and this is really an observation that's been made by the Williams teams over the last 40 years. When they've dealt with crude fires, they've observed that it seems to drop down about 2 to 3 feet an hour. So it's pretty much roughly about just under a meter an hour. So if you imagine what's the height of your tanks, your crude tanks?
32.5.
22, right. And normally with that tank, are they keeping them full about 80%?
80%.
Yeah, so about 80% of that, yeah. So 80%. Yeah. So what you're looking at is 80%. That's one of the first things we need to do. We're checking on the crude fire. We want to make sure the mixer is off. The second thing is we want to know what the level is in that tank. You may, if it's been burned in a while, you'll be able to see that because you'll see the paint line or the paint's burnt off. But in the initial stages of the fire, that's not going to be so obvious. So that's one of the other things we want to check. What's the level of that fuel in the tank? So if that tank is 80% full, or it's near the top, if it's 80% full, that's good for us for when we're applying our streams. If it's near the top, we've got to make sure when we do our attack, we are doing the proper application where we're looking at yesterday, a nice gentle application. We don't want to be plunging our streams into that tank there. But if we are quite high up there, and we know it's going to take about 1 hour, if we work 1 hour, 1 meter, that's probably giving us a good safety factor there, that heat wave's going to sink. That gives us a time of how long we've got before we get boil over with that tank. And this is actually important when we look at the tank level. Do you think if that tank's on fire now, what about the product? Do you think we should get them to take product out of the tank or keep product in the tank?
More product.
Now, that is... We will discuss this as well. It's a good way of thinking, especially with fixed roof tanks as well. Sometimes it might be advantageous to add product. Yeah. I think with a crude tank, you could ask. I mean, they might push back, but it's something you can consider when you're doing your risk assessment. If that tank's reasonably full, and that's such a clever question actually. If that tank's reasonably full, you might get the desire to take product out of the tank and save the product. Yeah, so they might want to do that. You might have that from operations. They might be thinking, let's save the product. Yeah. But for us, if they take product out of the tank, we have less time to put that fire out. Because yeah, the higher the crude level, the longer for that, the longer before we get boil over. Yeah. So more product in the tank gives us more time.
Transfer dia punya masa lagi cepat kan? So there's 7.
So which one is more practical? In your opinion?
For me, I would get them to keep the product in the tank.
Dia cakap sekarang ni the best way dia
Give me more time. Yeah, give me more time.
Bagi masa kat dia lebih lah untuk attack.
Kalau dia transfer, masa tu lagi cepat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your boil over is going to be quicker if you take the product out. The lower that tank, the less time you're going to have. But this could be a question that you ask. What if your tank now, let's say we know to set up, it's going to take you to get there and to set up. In reality, it might take you a couple of, you've got to move everything over there, you've got to set up. It might take you a couple of hours. It might take you 2 or 3 hours to set up. But you look at that crude level, it's quite low in there. Now you've got a choice here. You've got to make a choice. I'm not going to set up in time for that before that becomes a boil over situation. You might even have, oh shoot, now I've got the wind's going to change. Jam sablas. If I've got to wait for that and then I set up, now I've got 4 hours. But I know that crude level is only going to give me about 4 and a half, 5 hours. I've even got to factor in to put this out. Maybe I'm not going to have enough time. And that's where you make a judgment on that. What do I do? Do we bother fighting the fire? Do they want to put more in there? I mean, that's a big question if you're going to put more crude into a fire like that. Not one I'll be making, that's up to them. But you've really got to look, have I got time to fight this fire or not? That could be a judgment you have to make. Again, these are dynamic situations and we've got to be dynamic when we're dealing with them.
In your, in your opinion, which one is the best?
I've been to one fire where the level was so low, I just suggested don't fight it. Just protect exposures, because we weren't going to set up in time. I've personally had that, yeah.
then if we are using our friend idea, we top up with other products to maintain the level. Is that not supposed to be like that?
But that's something you have to talk to the product guys and all that. Do they feel the operations? I mean, if it is quite high, it's something to consider. Where I would seriously consider that is in a fixed roof tank, and I'll discuss that tomorrow. That is something you can physically think about. It's something not to rule out. It's something to consider. But that's got to be. That's not the firefighter's decision. Yeah, we're just an element in this. That's got to be. You got to deal with the control guys and that as well. Yeah. But it's something to consider for sure. It's a good question. And it's definitely, especially with a fixed roof tank, it's definitely, it can be very advantageous to put more products in the tank.
Previously in your work field,
I've never done it personally. I've never been involved where we put products in a tank. I've been involved in projects where we've told them to stop taking product off. I have been involved in that. But I've also been involved in fires where that was just so low, there was no way it was only like 2 meters of product in the bottom. There was just no way we were going to set up and fight that fire.
so which one is much more better for you?
Yeah, and that's risk assessment.
Risk assessment.
There's no
There is no good anything.
good answer. It's got to be made on the day. Yeah. As the oil expels, it's going to be burning as well. So you've got burning product. It's going to be coming out like candy floss. If I go on to the next slide here, we'll have a video here for you. We should have. This is just a small little header tank. There's a crude in there. What this is a government fire department has responded to it. So what you see here, they're just trying to cool the tank. But we discussed this the other day. They're just trying to cool one side there. What they're doing, they're setting up. They're setting up. They pretty much got something similar to a gooseneck on nozzle over the top there, and they're going to put a foam in on the line into that gooseneck. So on the top there, you've got crude burning, you've got superheated vapor layer, and they're going to plunge. And it's got, you see there, the level in this tank is high. Yeah. And now they're going to put foam in, and that foam is going to be 97% water. What's going to happen to the water when it hits that? Now, see that? See the change in colour? The steam? See, it's got a grey. That's your water converting to steam now. So that's always going to be one of your signs of a boil over. Water converts to steam, pushes the product out, and as you see, as the product comes out, it catches fire. Now, what is this? Is this boil over? Agree or disagree? Slop over. Who said slop over? Well done, Nanda. Good man. Yeah, it's a slop over. They've created it. Because it's on the surface. A boil over is going to come from the water at the bottom of the tank. They're introducing the water at the top. If that was a boil over, the expansion would be much more. So a boil over, if you think your tank diameter, it can be up to 10 times the diameter of your tank.